Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy. Now, this is the show where we talk to people in the AWS community, give you all the latest AWS information about generative AI, about FinOps, and right now we are focused on getting ready for reInvent 2024. My name is Stephen Barr.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahul Subramaniam. We're just 2 weeks away, and there's just so much excitement about everything that's happening around reInvent. We're going to be there, and we want to walk you through what to expect. We're going to try and do some predictions, right? What else is in store for today, Stephen?
Well, so this is the Preparing for reInvent series. Now, we're going to do a series of smaller episodes, which will be about 30 minutes long, talking about a particular topic. Now, with reInvent, it is broken down into particular topics, and one of the topics is databases. And we're going to talk about what is in store in terms of reInvent, what are the key database topics, what do we think the announcements are going to be, what are the interesting products that are going to be discussed. There's a lot to talk about. Now, before we jump into the details, the databases, what percentage of an application's cost would you estimate the database to be?
Uh, in general, compute accounts for about 30 to 40%, and databases another 30 to 40%. Everything else is the remaining 20 to
So,
40%. Yeah.
20 to 30% is the AI, the Lambda functions, the logging, all of the periphery. But the big two
Right.
chunks are compute and database. And
Correct.
database, in a sense, is where if you had to shut it all down at once, you'd much rather keep your database because that's where all of your key customer data is. So
Yeah.
database is definitely a key cost driver. Let's jump into well, before we jump into what we think is going to happen, let's review what's been happening because as we get into reInvent, there's always a set of announcements. There's teams that are
Yeah.
getting busy trying to get their blog posts out the door. So let's see what's new, what's been happening in the database world lately. So let's put this one on screen. This is the AWS What's New feed, and we are filtering for just database. Now,
Yeah.
there's more features. MySQL generally available, but the big one just happened a couple days ago, 4 days ago now. DynamoDB reduces price for on-demand and throughput. Let's have a look at this article and see what we think. Let's go here. DynamoDB reduces prices for on-demand, throughput, and global tables. So on-demand
Yeah.
has gone down by 50% and global tables by up to 67%. What has been the impact of this, Raul? What have you seen? How are
Yeah.
people talking about this?
Yeah. So historically, I think when developers are just trying to prototype their app, getting it out, they're just trying to build out a basic version of it. DynamoDB seems incredibly cheap. Seems, you know, uh, doesn't warrant another look at the pricing on it because it's so trivially cheap. However, when you start building apps at scale, DynamoDB starts getting incredibly expensive. Now, remember that DynamoDB offers a very specific functionality, which is to be able to have these document kind of store where you have a JSON object, you store it directly. Retrieval times are incredibly fast. We have an entire episode with Alex Debris where we talk about how DynamoDB actually works. But the fact is that for the super fast retrieval of data and the way the organization pattern of that is unique. And because of that, the pricing has traditionally been very high. And once you get to a very large scale, it gets very, very high. Now, the way around it traditionally has also been the fact that you then buy out provision throughput, which is that much cheaper. It's, I think, 1/7 of what on-demand throughput used to be. And so you dedicate, or you say, this is the throughput I want to dedicate, and that is what your database operates at. However, the problem there is that you never really knew how much throughput you would need all the time. So whenever you're not using all of the throughput, you're actually wasting money as well. So you had to make that really complicated trade-off about whether to buy provisioned throughput for your workload or whether you would go with on-demand. Now, given everything that we know after this price drop, I think that becomes a lot of that's the trade-off becomes a lot simpler. You want to stay on demand as much as possible, and your trade-off for provision throughput comes in when you're at least using 30% or more of your provision throughput.
Well, I really like this statement in the article here. With this pricing change, most provisioned capacity workloads on DynamoDB will achieve a lower price with on-demand mode. That's really
Yes.
an opinionated statement, especially in an AWS announcement, to say this is what will happen. That's pretty exciting. And again, next sentence here, pricing change is transformative as it makes on-demand the default and recommended for most DynamoDB workloads. So that means
Correct.
you can start your project, and until you get to that truly massive scale, you don't have to worry about switching
The
to
Trojan.
provisioned. You can
Yeah.
kick that can a lot further down the road.
I'm not sure most of the audience realizes this, but when you create a new DynamoDB instance, the default is that you will be given 5 units of provision throughput for reads and writes. Now, that should hopefully flip, and I hope they've made that change in the provisioning UI. But when you provision now, you should just stay on demand, which should be the general case. You pay a slightly higher price, but on demand because you don't know how much you're going to use. And only when you know your usage patterns really well, that's when you move to provisioned throughput.
Awesome. Well, that was the on-demand mode. Now let's talk about global tables. Now this is multi-active, multi-region data replication, 99.999% data availability. Now this
Right.
is in this article it's saying DynamoDB has reduced pricing for multi-region replicated writes to match the pricing of single region writes, simplifying cost modeling. For on-demand, this lowers replicated write pricing by 67%. And for tables using provisioning capacity, replicated write pricing has been reduced by 33%.
Yep.
So is this saying, is this been made more efficient in terms of network infrastructure? Have they just laid down a lot more fiber and they can do this now and they're passing on the savings? Or what do you think is going on? Why are they trying to push this price down?
I have a feeling that global tables was not something that they wanted everyone to use anyway, because it's kind of like a little bit of an anti-pattern. With DynamoDB, you're trying to, you know, maintain quick consistency. You're trying to get the consistency happening very, very fast. And when you do global tables, that just gets a little more complicated. You will get eventual consistency, and that's kind of the guarantee that they give you. But eventual consistency doesn't work for everyone. And they're trying to use DynamoDB, trying to get consistencies to be achieved as quickly as possible. Now, I think, yes, I think the infrastructure has improved to a point where global tables can be made reasonably efficient in terms of how fast they replicate. At the same time, I think global tables were prohibitively expensive in the past. You would have to think 100 times before you wanted to turn it on. Now, with this price reduction, it's become way simpler to decide that you want to operate something at global scale.
Well, I think we're going to come back to this global scale idea later in the show when we talk about other databases. How do we rate this announcement? This is DynamoDB reduces pricing. I thought also interesting, they put the pricing change into effect already because
Yes.
everyone is better off, or they're better off. So they don't really need to ask permission. Everyone's prices are going to go down. Some people's
Yeah.
forecasts are going to be off, but I think that that's probably okay if it's lower.
Yep.
So what do you think? How do you rate this one?
I think this would be very close to a 5, and I think this would be one of the first ones I'd give a 5, because I think if I echo the sentiments of all the online chatter about this announcement, everyone is ecstatic about the fact that the prices dropped. We don't usually see big service price drops anymore, particularly with instances or databases. It's not common to see this, but this massive 50% price drop is unique and everyone loves it. Second, the fact that they're making it automatic, you start benefiting from it right away without doing a thing. Awesome. That's exactly how it should be. And third, the article itself is very detailed about what happens. They've been transparent about the fact that most users have probably created provision throughput and not really using much of it, or not using enough of it for it to make financial sense. And they've made the decision to default to the on-demand throughput. And that is, I think, all positive. So there is really not much to fault in this announcement or in the step that the DynamoDB team has taken.
Well, congrats then for a 5 cloud, and it simplifies to the DynamoDB price drop. Can't
Correct.
possibly fault this one. I'd like you were saying about the online chatter. For those of you who don't know who are new to the DynamoDB universe, the person you need to follow is Alex Debris. He's been on the AWS Insiders podcast with you and one of the first guests on that one. And this is his post just a few days ago. Holy smokes, 50% cut in DynamoDB on-demand pricing. Huge news for almost everyone using Dynamo. Now you need to be getting more than 30% utilization with provision throughput to beat on demand. Not
Yep.
impossible, but fairly tricky. That's a lot of utilization. Let's
Correct.
see. He got 600, almost 700 reactions, 46 reposts, 13 comments. This is good discussion here. I like this one, how it's a price that things wouldn't go bad under a wide range of possible adoption patterns. I know they know the worst cost of the system. This is good discussion here. Got to go update my DDB calculator now. And this is helping. Cheaper than S3 for some uses. I wonder. Anyway, this is indeed huge. I was expecting 10 to 20%, 50% is massive. This is great. So good news here. And yeah, if you don't know Alex Debris, he doesn't work for AWS, but he's positioned himself as the DynamoDB expert, and especially in terms of data modeling using what they call the single table design. So DynamoDB, if you're careful with things, you don't need to join multiple tables together. You can do a lot in one table.
Yeah, I'd say Rick Houlihan, who is with MongoDB right now. I think formerly he was with AWS. Rick is more of the single table design aficionado or proponent of the single table design. Alex is a little more balanced. He gives you a view of when you should use it and when it's probably not a great idea to use single table design. He's more balanced on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should check out Alex Debris' DynamoDB book. It is probably the go-to book for the topic.
There it is.
It's a masterful read. Yeah, you should definitely read it if you're doing anything with DynamoDB.
And easy URL, dynamodbbook.com. There we go. All right, well, let's go to the next DynamoDB announcement. I'll put this one on screen. DynamoDB introduces warm throughput for tables and indexes. Now, this was announced the day before, and this one is warm throughput value provides visibility into the number of read and write operations your DynamoDB tables can readily handle, while pre-warming lets you proactively increase the value to meet future traffic demands. So the idea is, if you're using on-demand, it is, in a sense, like a Lambda function, and there might be a cold start if you haven't touched that data in a while. Is that right? Okay.
Correct. And there are a lot of scenarios where you have these bursts of traffic that you need to kind of operate on your DynamoDB. Let's say you are doing your end of month reports, you're doing your end of quarter reports, things like that, where all of a sudden you want tons and tons of processing to happen. You're running a massive map reduce operation that's going to hit your DynamoDB constantly and get all that information out. In all of those scenarios, you want to probably pre-warm your database so that you don't have those cold start problems. You can use this new approach where you can warm up those tables in advance of your operations and make sure that those are running as seamlessly as possible.
Yeah, I love that they give here product launches, shopping events. I think about sporting events. If you are a food delivery company or a food delivery app, and there's a big event coming, everyone's going to be ordering pizza and wings and whatever, then you want to make sure that you are ready to handle that increase rather than having it be forced to respond to the demand, because that's always kind of lagging, whereas this, you can preempt it.
Yeah, I don't know whether this Friday folks noticed that Netflix was down for a bit, and I wonder if it was DynamoDB outage because it couldn't keep up with the traffic around the
Jake
fight.
Paul, Mike Tyson fight.
The fight that was being aired.
Did you watch?
So I didn't watch. I was in transit. I was traveling almost 3 or 4 days, so I didn't watch. But I did try to keep up with all the news that was happening. But yeah, I mean, those are all scenarios where you want to kind of pre-warm your data to make sure that you don't run into outages like that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think in Netflix's case, there was a hell of a lot of bandwidth. I think they could have. I think it was plenty warm. There's not bandwidth to be had,
Yeah.
but it was a neat event. That's for sure. Let's see. DynamoDB scales to workloads of virtually any size. Okay, so we've gone here. You can handle large spikes if you have an upcoming peak event to exceed the warm throughput value for a given table. You can pre-warm. Now, of course, pre-warming your table's throughput incurs a charge. Obviously, you can just keep it warm otherwise.
Yeah.
And so, have a look at the pricing page. Let's have a look at that quickly. Let's see. Pricing page, capacity for on demand. Let's find the warming. If you pre-warm a global table replica for reads, writes, or both, all replicas will be pre-warmed to match the same warm throughput values. You'll be charged in each AWS region that is part of the same global table configuration. Is this? Let's see if we can actually find the warming cost. You will incur a one-time fee at the regional rate of one read capacity unit for every unit increase in read warm throughput and one write capacity unit for every unit increase in the write warm throughput. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just
So it's
charging
pretty
you
similar to correct, but whatever scale you want. Yeah.
Well, how do we rate this announcement, both in terms of the announcement itself and also the actual functionality that it is now giving us for warm throughput? Do you think, and what percent of DynamoDB users should even think about this?
I have a feeling that this is a very niche feature of some very, very, very large retail customers, or for apps like that. I don't think this is a very general use case for DynamoDB. So definitely a niche use case.
Yeah. Because I was thinking that very rarely do the floodgates just open, right? Even like on our food delivery example, right? Some people are going to order pizza 2 hours before the game or during the game or in the middle of the game, right?
Yeah.
You have some time to ramp up, and DynamoDB has big enough overall capacity to absorb that. So it's only when
My
you're
guess
going
is that Prime Day, or Amazon Retail or Prime Day, or the likes of those would basically be your number one customers for this. I don't foresee the general app space using this as a big part of their architecture.
Or something like a ticket sales where it goes on and you have people hitting refresh, waiting to get that front row seat or whatever it is, where it's just an immediate influx.
It's kind of like the Coldplay concert that just happened in India, where I don't know. I think we shared it on one of the previous episodes, right? There was
No, I didn't hear about this.
Oh, you don't know about this? So I had a friend who logged in the first 10 minutes to book a ticket, and that friend was, I think, 1.2 million in the waiting list.
Wow, Coldplay's biggest show ever. I'm going to put this tab up. Coldplay's biggest show ever take place in India in January. Wow.
Yeah, so that
venue, 130,000 people. Wow.
Yeah, but so in 10 minutes, you would have been 1 million plus on the waiting list. Just search for Coldplay ticket waiting list.
Let's have a look. Coldplay concert for $11,000. Wow.
Yeah. Just go down, and I think I have.
Within minutes, tickets were sold out and reappeared. Not a single person got a ticket. 700,000 people waiting ahead of her. That's what I decided to give up.
I actually have a screenshot of a friend who was over 1 million in the waiting list.
Oh, that would be hard. I think the whole stadium would have to cancel 9 times over if you're going to get in.
Exactly. But that is a kind of
or 8 times over.
Yeah.
And good for Coldplay. And good for those 132,000 people who are going to have a great show.
Correct. They already had one in Mumbai, so that was done, and then they're going to have another one in Jan.
Awesome. All right. Well, how do we rate the pre-warming throughput? How do we
Okay,
rate
so this one I'd say definitely simplifies, and I'd give it a 4 cloud, because it's well documented, relatively easy to get started with it. Though even though it's like a niche, it's not mass.
Yeah,
it doesn't affect every customer out there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's take a quick break, and we come back. Let's go into our predictions for what's going to happen this year's reInvent. We'll cover what got talked about last year's reInvent. I think there's going to be a lot of generative AI mixed in to the database world, a lot of vectors, and something about large scale. Certainly, we're all thinking global scale. So let's come back after the break and have some fun speculating on this, and also talk about the important sessions and conference talks and parts of reInvent 2024 that you'd want to go to if databases are your thing. We'll see you in a minute.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix uses AWS recommended savings techniques. It fixes, not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the link to start saving now.
Okay, we are back. Now, in this part of the show, we wanted to talk about what happened last year's reInvent. Now, the two, I think, keynotes that really were relevant to this area were Dr. Swami Subramaniam's, and that was on generative AI and on vector databases. I'll put that up on screen. We had talked a lot about natural language to SQL using generative AI to interact with the database, and also a lot of talk about Zero-ETL. And then there was Peter DeSantis' talk. I'll share this one, where he went on what would it take to have Aurora be limitless, and then introduced Aurora Limitless. And by the way, that just went GA just 2 weeks ago. Right. So that being said, and that's Aurora Limitless is talking about the automatic sharding of read and write shards, the time sync service that they had to write to make this all possible, how you can get millions of petabytes in a single database. You can co-locate particular data on different shards, scale to millions of writes per second. So all that was a very exciting thing, and it kind of gave us a hint on where we were going. So that being said, now that we've had a year of generative AI, plus what we know about databases, where do you think this is going for this year? What do you expect to see?
Okay. I have 2 or 3 predictions for this one. Number one, AI is, of course, going to be front and center. AI is defining a whole lot of the next generation use cases, right? Whether it be for compute, whether it be for databases, whether it be for storage, all of those. It's becoming really important as a use case, driver. Now, as it stands today, the database world or the database services are extremely fragmented within AWS. Now, in the past, they've said, use the right database for the right problem, right? But today, in the world of AI, the fact that it can deal with so much unstructured data, and you need all of the data to be able to make the AI work incredibly well, I have a feeling that there's going to be a new data store, which is going to be completely unstructured and will allow you to just dump structured, unstructured, whatever kind of data you have all in one place and operate at AI scale. That seems to be the need of the hour, because otherwise it's such a hassle to massage and pull out data from different data sources, trying to connect to 15 different data sources in different places. All, some of them might be DynamoDB based, document based. Some of them are SQL based. Some of them are, literally dumped into S3. I have a feeling that they're going to try and make it easier for that AI use case to have one data store that can do that just does massive amounts of unstructured plus structured data and works seamlessly. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether they're going to also throw in graph databases in there, because knowledge graphs are an important part of AI, but that's a little bit, that might go a little too far. So that might be kept
It's
aside.
so different than the traditional bucket of data, whether
Correct.
it's structured or unstructured.
Correct.
Because the key part is the relationship. So
Correct.
I'm trying to think, what would they call this? Aurora Limitless everything. just dump it all in. Doesn't matter what it is. It's a CSV, it's a JSON, it's a some other tabular format, whatever.
I could
Just throw
imagine
it
that if you gave to a system some data, it would figure out, hey, this needs to go into, this looks like a tabular data store, so let me dump it over there. This looks like it is unstructured text, let me just dump it as text. Or I might want to create a knowledge graph out of it, or create some kind of hierarchy around it. I mean, I think we are at a point where a data store that is intelligent and can handle all kinds of different data and self-optimize or self-provision it without you having to define all of that upfront is the next big paradigm shift.
Okay, well, we're at Vegas. We're going to see the Vegas odds on this. I would love to see one of those prediction graphs as we get closer into the keynote. Are we going to get the unlimited data type database? So columnar, CSV, let's throw in multimedia, throw in a movie, whatever it is, the unlimited type database. Okay, so
Correct.
That's your prediction.
Correct.
I'm going to predict something, if they could figure out how to get PG Vector, so Postgres' extension PG Vector, to work with Aurora Limitless, we can have Bedrock Limitless knowledge bases. So just think of that name, Limitless knowledge base. I have no knowledge that this is possible. This is not in my knowledge base to use upon. But that would be neat. If you had some knowledge base, you could just throw in everything as you're building off of yours and have it immediately available to Bedrock in a RAG. I don't know how that would. They would have to have overcome some serious technical challenges for this to work, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think if you have an AI, it's almost think of it as AWS managed layer of various different kinds of existing databases, but they add a layer on top of it, which is AI driven, which then decides how to route the data to the different databases and pull out, when you're trying to pull out data from these databases, it knows exactly where to go looking for it.
Okay. Well, if AWS doesn't build this, then they should, or we should do it, sell it to them.
No, the thing is that I think what I've learned is that if they are dropping big bombshells like the price drop on DynamoDB as part of the pre-reinvent announcements, then I'm expecting a big step function improvement announcement that's coming during the keynote. Because typically they'd either do that, DynamoDB like announcement over there if they did not have something even bigger to announce. So that's why I'm trying to think a little bit outside the box about what that might be. And given where all the focus of the world is today, it's got to be something along those lines.
Definitely. Well, let's do a database retrospective the week after reInvent. We're going to see where we were right, where we were wrong, or maybe just surprised altogether. It's something that totally blows both of our predictions out of the water. So looking forward to doing that sometime mid-December, the week after reInvent. That is, so if you were going to reInvent and you were focused on databases, let's pull up the database focused area. I'll put this on the screen here and see, okay, what should you do if you were focused in on databases and you were going to reInvent? Let's share this tab. So again, we're going at the reInvent topics section, and one of the topics on this left-hand corner is databases. So looking at the database sections, they give a chart your database's journey. This is an interesting one. DAT 401, applied data modeling with DynamoDB. This is schema design. Interestingly, the DynamoDB using design puzzles. This is a chalk talk. That's an interesting one. Solving a few design puzzles that may seem simple but are actually complex. So this might be some of this. When do you use single table? When do you use multi-table?
Yeah.
Making your Amazon Aurora cluster more resilient. This is high performance, global scale. In this chalk talk, learn about features such as Aurora Global Database, RDS Proxy. By the way, Raul, you've been a strong proponent of RDS Proxy, saying that when you have high loads on your RDS database, often it's just spending a lot of time holding on to connections. And RDS Proxy can help mitigate that. Is that right?
That is 100% right. Actually, there are two use cases where RDS Proxy really makes a big difference. Typically, when you started your application, you're building a bunch of functionality. They're basically CRUD operations on your database. Everything works fine. You've got enough scale for your database. All of a sudden, somebody wants all these analytics reports. Analytics reports invariably are very expensive on the database because you have to read millions of rows at a time to do even the simplest of tasks on your reports. And when that happens, you suddenly put in a huge strain on your master DB. So RDS Proxy helps in two ways. Number one is you can use the RDS Proxy to load balance between your primary write instance and your read replicas. And that's a really neat way to do it. The other one is when you're using tons of lambdas. When you have lambdas will typically hold on to connections, and lambdas can scale. You could launch 5,000 lambdas at a particular instance to process something. And that means that you're going to hold 5,000 connections to the database. That takes up a ton of resources. That takes up a ton of, it also increases the time it takes for your Lambda to actually operate, and will make everything way more expensive. RDS Proxy is a really neat way to ensure that the Lambdas are operating with the database without having to set up new connections every time. The RDS Proxy will take care of maintaining a connection pool and offering them to the Lambda as and when connections are available.
I'm chuckling, remembering, and I think it's been long enough that I could tell this story. I was at a place where they just bought a copy of Tableau, and everyone was so angry. Oh, Tableau sucks. It's so slow. It's so horrible. This dashboard takes a minute to load. Well, if the underlying query takes 59 seconds, pretty sure it's not Tableau's fault that this dashboard takes a minute. And it's because of what you said. And you'll start digging down, and there's full node scans and select stars and write outer joins again and again, and layers on layers, and all these other problems that you end up having to clean up. So database design is still tricky. That's I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. Let's keep scrolling down. LangChain to build GenAI apps. I had a friend just ask me just the other day, should we still even use frameworks like LangChain, or are you just using Converse? And I personally mostly just use an array of messages, but still, LangChain is still a huge player in this ecosystem. It'll be interesting to see this one.
Yeah, LangChain is neat in two ways. Number one is while Converse API is only specific to the Bedrock models, LangChain offers not only the Bedrock models, but also a bunch of other models that you might not get in the AWS ecosystem. For example, we're doing a bunch of work with generating video, whether with tools like Luma and so on. We're doing a lot of voice synthesis with Lemon Labs and so on. We are using some state-of-the-art image generation models that are currently not yet available with Bedrock. And when you're experimenting at that scale, things are moving so fast. You want a platform that allows you to leverage the best of all worlds. And in that approach, it makes sense to use something like LangChain. It also simplifies the way your agents are constructed, your chatbots are constructed. They can all talk the same protocol in a sense.
Now, see, we're talking about databases, but we're really talking about AI, and I think that's going to be the theme of this. Hey. So if we look at the database sections in general, if we look at the database talks, let's see what tab there we go. So looking at the catalog, there are 12 innovation talks. And then, so there's 174 sessions that or content types that have to do with databases. Of those, 12 are these so-called innovation talks. So again, first one, foundation for data-driven and generative AI apps, and a lot of these would be simulcast of that one. Foundation for generative AI apps. Okay, so they have 4 sessions of this. 6, generative AI in action from prototype to production. Okay, so this is effectively 2 that looks like 12 because there's 6, but these are the innovation talks. Have you seen, let's see, this is Jeff Carter, Vice President, Ganapathy, Krishnamurthy, Eric Peters, and Sanjay Nair. Okay, NFL Media and United Airlines. This will be interesting.
Yeah, there are lots of, databases are so central to applications. You'll find tons and tons of different talks talking about real world use cases. So if you are new to reInvent, I would say focus on the people that you want to meet, go to their talks. The content will all be available later, and they'll all be in blogs. They'll all be in, you'll always find them online, but try and meet with the people who have the most experience working with AWS databases. Talk to them about the pitfalls, talk to them about their learnings. It's the war stories or the war scars that really, give you the greatest learning. And so talk to them about that. That's what is going to help you. All the other documentation is available on the AWS site, and videos and training sessions, all of that stuff. But these little nuances about what went wrong, when you thought you designed everything the right way, what went wrong? Learning from those is probably the best thing you could do with your time while you're in Vegas. So go meet with people who have tons of experience building apps and who have failed multiple times, and they've had learnings from that.
No, I completely agree. Those innovation talks are very large. You see the 6 simulcast sessions. But if you want to talk to people and you have a specific problem, here's the chalk talks. There's 42 chalk talks. They're much more specific. Look at this. Migrating and operating DB2 databases on RDS. Cost-effective RAG generative AI with Aurora.
Correct.
There are cost optimization for Dynamo, data models for Neptune using GenAI and Diagram as code tools. I like that a lot because what I like about graph databases, it's basically like you're using a whiteboard. And the way you'd model the world on a whiteboard is how you'd model it in a graph. And so now with generative AI, you can take that whiteboard, take a picture of it, and all of a sudden you've got a Neptune model. Let's see if I can have time to run over to that one. So let's see. Lots of good, much more specific ones. And because these are chalk talks, everyone's going to be standing around. You will have, this one's about generative AI to help smallholder farms in Ghana, right? So this is going to be a very niche group of people who are going to go see this. And if you are into this, you're definitely going to want to talk to everyone else who's there. And the chalk talk format is going to help you do that. And it's 5 p.m., right? So you might have dinner afterwards and see where it goes. So there's quite a few chalk talks here. And then one more, which again, for learning, is the workshops. There are 18 sessions on workshops, and some of them are repeats. And they say, bring a laptop and participate. This is where you're going to get your hands dirty. Some of them can be ambitiously scoped. I saw this one. It is using Aurora, Dynamo, Elasticache, Neptune, and OpenSearch to build a fully functional bookstore. And you've got 2 hours to do that. But hey, if that's what they're committing to, give it a shot. Bring your laptop and be ready. Have your AWS account set up. Have your IAM ready to go. Make sure they'll probably hand you a kind of a starter playground, so you're not going to waste half an hour getting IAM all set up.
Correct.
So that's exciting. You can go see how that works. Okay, so that's our talk on databases. So go to the workshops, go to the chalk talks, innovation talks. There's going to be a lot of generative AI focus. Raul, you are predicting the universal Amazon store anything store, and I'm hoping for Postgres Limitless Bedrock knowledge bases. We're going to see what happens.
That will be one of the side hustles or one of the side use cases.
Yes. All right. Well, I hope this has been an informative episode. So tune in. We've got AI, ML coming up. We've got business applications coming up. And before reInvent, we will have covered all of the topics. We'll have a list of the predictions we're making, see how it lands after reInvent, and we're looking forward to seeing. It's certainly going to be AI mixed into it, no matter what. That is just the way things are going. Raul, any closing thoughts to wrap up this episode?
No, is this going to be exciting? I am just struggling to figure out all the sessions that I really want to go to. There's just so many people, so many amazing folks to catch up with. So yeah, prioritizing is going to be the focus, and I recommend everyone else start doing that right away as well.
And like we've said, you're going to have fear of missing out, and that's fine. You are going to miss out. You're going to miss out on all of these things because you're going to be going to all of those things. But those things are great. These things are great. You just have to pick. It will be okay. And just let it guide, let it take its course. But do have a plan. The worst thing is to try and figure it out on the spot. Oh, what talk are we going to next? That will not be good. So have a plan, but feel free to deviate. See you tomorrow. And also on Thursday, we have our long-awaited episode with Bowen Wang, FinOps expert. She is going to be giving a talk at reInvent with Corey Quinn and Matt. What was Matt's last name? Corey Quinn and Matt. And they're going to have, that'll be another good one. We'll post the link to their session. Bowen's talk I'll post the link on that. We'll have her interview is coming up on Thursday, so make sure to see that one. All right, thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.